Welcome to the Festival of Dangerous Ideas podcast. My name is Danielle Harvey and I'm the festival director. Over the coming months, we look forward to sharing with you the audio recordings from the 2022 festival. FODI started in 2009 and is the original Disruptive Ideas Festival. FODI exists to bring to light important conversations that push the boundaries of conventional thought. In a world where the internet saturates everything, where does the internet stop and our human selves begin? We're nudged and pushed by an endless stream of alerts, notifications and recommendations, and our attention and money are pulled in directions that seem to serve the interests of the platforms. As we inevitably drift towards automation, New York Times tech columnist and host of the Rabbit Hole podcast, Kevin Roose, offers us a digital wellness checkup in how we can fight back to preserve our humanity. Please enjoy the FODI 2022 session, Caught in a Web, presented in partnership with UNSW Sydney.
Hello. A few years ago, I was radicalized on the internet. Now, I know what you're thinking after that introduction. I'm a journalist. I cover technology for the New York Times. I'm probably going to tell you about how young men are being turned into neo-Nazis by their YouTube recommendations, or how your grandma is in grave danger of becoming an anti-vaxxer from too many Facebook memes. But my radicalization story is quite a bit stranger and frankly much more embarrassing than that, because I was radicalized by Spotify into being a Jimmy Buffett fan. It started a few years ago. During the first year of the pandemic, I was bored, I was anxious, I was burned out. One day I was in my home office trying to get a piece done. I was trying to get some music that would help me finish this piece, and I just cranked up Spotify and put on my Spotify Discover playlist, and then this song comes wafting out of the speakers. It says, "Wasting away again in Margaritaville." And my first thought was, this is strange. I'm not really a Margaritaville guy. I'm more of like a jazz, blues, hip-hop guy. And for a minute, I wondered if my account had been hacked or if some engineer at Spotify had decided to troll me in revenge for something I'd written. But I kept listening, played it again, and thought to myself, kind of catchy. Pretty soon, I had an idea. I went into my house, I dug some pina colada mix out of the cupboard, I put on a Hawaiian shirt in my closet, I went back to my office, closed the door, cranked up Jimmy Buffett. Voila, instant vacation. I was transported from my house in California to a swaying hammock in the Caribbean. Over the next few years, this little break became a regular and embarrassing part of my self-care routine. I started calling it island time. And my wife just mocks me mercilessly for it. But I don't care, because it actually works. Whenever I'm feeling the weight of the world, I pull up Spotify, put on my Aloha shirt, and head out to my office for a few minutes at the beach. There's me during island time a week or so ago. Please do not post this on Twitter. I will never hear the end of it. Now, I know that this was probably not the radicalization story you expected. My usual reporting is much darker and more about extremism. A few years ago, I hosted a podcast series, as Toby mentioned, called Rabbit Hole, which featured the story of a 26-year-old guy named Caleb Kane, who was radicalized into the far right through his YouTube recommendations. I also wrote about this woman, Valerie Gilbert, a Harvard-educated New Yorker who was sucked into QAnon after spending too much time on Facebook. I even wrote about PewDiePie, one of the biggest online celebrities in the world, who has more than 100 million YouTube subscribers and whose name was mentioned by the shooter during the 2019 Christchurch massacre. I still believe those stories are important, but this is the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, and frankly, the idea that the internet is turning some of us into extremists doesn't seem very dangerous anymore. It's just common sense. We all have seen people who disappear down online rabbit holes and emerge months or years later as completely different people. So I started today by telling you about my embarrassing Jimmy Buffett addiction because I want to propose a slightly more dangerous idea, which is that it's not actually the extremists that I'm most worried about. We are all different now as a result of our encounters with the internet. And I literally do mean all of us. Me, you, the people sitting on your right or left. No matter what your beliefs are, which politicians you vote for, or which apps are on your phone, all of us are, none of us is immune to the forces that are being exerted on us by the internet. And actually, if I could make this take a few degrees hotter, this is actually a subject that I think the conspiracy theorists that I've met and reported on grasp a little bit better than some of us, frankly, because at least they understand that they're being manipulated. Now, they think it's like Hillary Clinton or the Bill Gates or the blood-drinking Satanists at the New York Times who are doing the manipulating, but at least they know that something on the internet is not right. The machines that influence our behavior go by many names. There are recommender systems and personalization algorithms, For You pages, reinforcement learning models, just to use a few. They are designed by some of the smartest people in the world, PhDs in computer science, experts in fields like persuasive design and choice architecture. Many of them are powered by artificial intelligence. Some of them are invisible, some of them are visible. Some are benign, others are malignant. But what they all have in common is that they are sitting on the other side of our screens, attempting to change who we are and what we do. They're there every time we pick up our phones, sitting on our shoulders and whispering into our ear, don't you want to buy a different brand of dog food? Shouldn't you vote for this other politician? Wouldn't it be fun to listen to Jimmy Buffett? And it's important to understand that these persuasive features aren't just minor sideshows. In many cases, the machines actually run the show. So I pulled up a few statistics about how deeply these algorithms are embedded into what we do on the internet every day. So at YouTube, for example, 70% of all time spent on the platform, billions and billions of hours a year in total, are the direct result of algorithmic recommendations. Amazon has said that 30% of page views on its entire site are generated by recommendations, which at its scale translates to many billions of dollars a year in revenue. Spotify Discover playlists, which are those totally algorithmically generated ones that I mentioned at the beginning, account for more than half the streaming income of something like 8,000 artists, according to the latest figures. And TikTok, which is just one giant recommendation engine, is the fastest growing app in the world. US teens spend an average of 89 minutes a day on it. The point I want to make today is that these things matter deeply. That in many ways, we are what we pay attention to, and that understanding the forces that are trying to manipulate us online, how they work, how to engage wisely with them, is the key not only to maintaining our independence and our senses of selves, but actually to our survival as a species. In order for us to live free and fulfilled lives, we need to know where the machines stop and our human selves begin. So I want to start by telling you a few things that I've learned in the course of years of reporting on these machines and how they influence us. The first is that we trust machines even when we shouldn't. A few years ago, I had a bizarre experience. This is another embarrassing algorithm happens to Kevin anecdote. I'd been using one of those wardrobe in a box services where they send you clothes. I just don't like shopping very much, so I'd signed up, and you put in your measurements and you make some selections about what kind of clothes you like, and then they send you a box of clothes every month. And I remember I was wearing this blue bomber jacket that they'd sent me, and I'd probably worn it a dozen times, and I was standing in front of the mirror one day, and I just had this sort of experience of being like, I hate this. I don't like this at all. This looks terrible on me. Why am I wearing this? And I started thinking more about this and the many ways that we let machines influence us even when our common sense would tell us something different. You could call this algorithmic deference. Because the truth is that often when our own judgment and a machine's judgment collide, we let the machine win. We just assume that it's right, that it's smarter than us, more sophisticated, that it knows something about us that we don't know, and that we should just shut up and go along with it. I am a big fan of The Office, and one of my favorite scenes in the entire series comes during this episode when Michael Scott learns a very hard lesson about algorithmic deference, and I want to play a clip from you from that.
Everything falls apart, and eventually you die and no one remembers you.
That is a very good point, Dwight.
Make a right turn.
Wait, no. It means bear right.
No,
Up there.
It said right. It said take a right.
No, look. It means go up to the right, bear right, over the bridge, and hook up with 307.
Make a right
Maybe it's
turn.
a shortcut, Dwight. It said go to the right.
It can't mean that. There's a lake there.
I think it knows where it is going.
This is the lake.
Machine
This
knows.
is the lake.
Stop yelling at me.
No, it's
Stop
up here.
yelling.
There's no road here.
The machine knows could be the mantra of our age. The second thing I've learned is that machines don't just read our minds, they lead our minds. A few years ago, a team of researchers at the University of Minnesota came up with a series of experiments to test the influence that algorithms have on our choices. And the way that they set up this test, they recruited a whole group of college students, and they took a list of popular songs, and they gave each of those songs ratings between 1 and 5 stars. And then they said, these ratings are personalized to you. And then they asked the students to listen to little snippets of the songs and to say how much money they would be willing to pay for them. This was during the iTunes era when people actually paid for songs. And this is actually a great way to design an experiment, by the way, because it relies on something that economists call revealed preference theory, which is that if you want to know what someone values, you don't ask them, you look at what they pay for. So they asked these students, how much would you be willing to pay for these songs? And what the students didn't know is that behind the scenes, the researchers had manipulated the rankings. Some of them got more stars than they would have otherwise gotten. Some of them got fewer stars. And then they forced the students to listen to the songs all the way through and asked them again how much they'd be willing to pay. The researchers were pretty sure that forcing students to actually listen to the entire songs would neutralize the impact of these star rankings. The students would form their own opinions, right, and ignore the stars. But they were wrong. What they found instead was that these recommendations actually overrode the students' own individual tastes. They offered significantly more money for higher rated songs, even when those ratings were totally made up. The results were clear. When an algorithm tells us that we're going to like something, we trust the algorithm more than ourselves. Now, the moral that I'm trying to leave with today is not that all algorithms are bad, because in a lot of ways they're great. Like when we open Netflix to find something to watch, we don't want to scroll through an alphabetical list of all the programs on Netflix. We like that it presents us with a smaller set. If we put something like a smart thermostat in our homes, we want it to learn from us what temperature we like in which room and automatically adjust itself. These things are not innately bad. The problem arises when the machines get their own ideas, when they can start messing with our options and our defaults, drawing attention to not what they think we'll like, but what they want us to like. There's a technology researcher named Christian Sandvig who calls this corrupt personalization. And it's a real problem because we do trust these machines, and this corrupt personalization betrays that trust. What if Netflix decides that it would actually rather you watch its own original programming than the shows made by other networks, and just says that those are the recommended shows for you? What if the smart thermostat company strikes a deal with the maker of wool blankets to imperceptibly turn down the heat by a couple degrees at night so the blanket company can sell more blankets? That might seem far-fetched, but this kind of corrupt personalization happens every day. Social media platforms shove viral videos into our feeds, not because they think we'll actually like them, but because they think will stay engaged, and they need the ad revenue. We know that Amazon steers people toward its house brands in search results because it wants you to buy from them. It makes more money than when you buy from a third party. And because these algorithms pass themselves off as personalized, and because we trust that they are actually personalized to our desires, we are predisposed to trust them. That is a big deal. And I've said this to audiences, and one time someone came up to me and he said, well, isn't this just no different than advertising before the internet? Like, if you saw, a TV ad, you'd be predisposed to go out and buy whatever the ad was for. But this is actually different. The veneer of personalization makes it much easier to trust what they're telling you. In the old days, you might see an ad for like a pair of pants on TV, and you might think, those are for somebody, but they're not for me. But now we've got these machines that are telling us over and over again, like, no, you like these pants. These pants were made for you. Trust me on this because I know you. These machines don't just read our minds, they lead our minds. The third thing I've learned is that all of these machines are getting smarter. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Future Proof about AI and automation, and just a few weeks ago, I wrote a column in the New York Times that was called "We Need to Talk About How Good AI is Getting," sort of updating some of the ideas from my book. And this column was my attempt to draw attention to the many advances that have been made in the field of artificial intelligence just in the last year or two. I wrote about the improvements that have been coming to systems like GPT-3, which is a text completion algorithm that was developed by a company called OpenAI. And it's sort of like a superpowered version of the autocomplete feature on your phones. You can give it a prompt like, rewrite Romeo and Juliet in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, and it can actually do it. I wrote about AlphaFold, which is an AI engine developed by the Google subsidiary DeepMind that has learned to predict the structures of proteins, which is actually like something that has bedeviled molecular biologists for decades, like being able to take an amino acid sequence and predict the 3D structure of a protein. They trained this algorithm originally to play games like Go, and it was able to learn how to predict the structures of proteins, which was a major groundbreaking accomplishment in the field of drug discovery and biomedical research. The journal Science actually named AlphaFold its top breakthrough of the year last year. And I wrote about these AI image generators that you may have seen. These really just are one of the newest things in the field. They just came about over the last 6 months or so. They've got names like DALL-E 2 and Midjourney. And you basically, the way they work is you plug in some text into a prompt, I want to see a Soviet-style propaganda poster of Pikachu riding a skateboard, and it will turn them into realistic imagery. That is an actual prompt that I fed DALL-E 2 the other day. There is my Soviet Pikachu riding a skateboard. And also last night, just for kicks, I was like, I should show them something new. So I wanted to see what was the most stereotypically Australian possible image I could make using DALL-E 2. So I went on in and I logged in and I asked it to generate a realistic photo. Actually, I said award-winning photo of a kangaroo eating a meat pie on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. So here's the kangaroo. Sorry, had to do it. So I published this column, and immediately I got dozens of emails from AI researchers who basically said, like, good story, but you don't know the half of it. Because they were telling me about stuff that they're working on and how all of these AI fundamental advances are being commercialized and combined with other technologies like targeted advertising to give companies a much, much more detailed idea of who we are, what we want, and how to modify our behavior. So just to give you one example, a researcher told me about this new technology called pedestrian re-identification. There's a slide from a white paper. which is basically a fancy way of saying that companies now know how to use AI to track you across multiple cameras with multiple resolutions and data sources as you walk down the street and combine that with other sources of data. So if Susan is captured on a closed-circuit TV coming out of the train station, there are now AI technologies that can extract her image, link it with a different image from a different camera of Susan going into a coffee shop, and put that data together with data from Susan's phone and credit card company to show that, oh, actually, while she was in the coffee shop, she bought a slice of banana bread. And so now, in a totally unsupervised way, they can say, okay, every time Susan gets on the train, show her an ad for banana bread. It can connect those dots. And that's not like a dumbed down illustration of what this is being used for. I thought that this research would be coming out of academic labs, but it's not. It's coming out of commercial enterprises. Businesses are using this. I also heard from AI researchers that I was not spending nearly enough time talking about what you might call the era of ubiquitous synthetic media. So right now, when I write a story for the New York Times, that story goes online, it goes in the newspaper, and no matter who you are or how you're reading it, it's the same text, it's the same images. But in the very near future, there are going to be news sites that use tools like GPT-3 and DALL-E 2 to generate entirely new stories on demand at the point of click that are going to be personalized to a reader in real time. So instead of a million people reading the same news story about the war in Ukraine, you'll have an AI model that generates stories about the war in Ukraine for you in real time by looking at your browsing history, your IP address, the information on your social media profiles, and proactively generating a story that is specifically tailored to your interests with a slightly different slant than the one your neighbor right next to you is reading. This is, to put it mildly, like a very radical shift. We spent many, many hundreds of years in a media environment where information was produced and distributed by humans. We then, in the last 10 or 15 years, moved to a world in which information was produced by humans and distributed by machines, the Facebook news feed, the Google search algorithm, etc. And now we are moving into an era in which information and entertainment will be produced without human involvement at all and distributed by computers. Another way to put that is that we are fast moving away from the era of all the news that's fit to print and into the era of all the news that's dynamically generated and personalized to achieve business objectives. So, what do? How can we cling to our humanity and our sanity even as machines are trying to drown us in a sea of corruptly personalized recommendations and synthetic media? Well, there is some good news here, which is that it's actually not that complicated to get ourselves out of this mess. We don't all have to go back to school and become programmers. We don't have to throw our devices in the ocean, renounce modernity, and move to the mountains. Well, you can do that if you want. Sounds kind of nice sometimes. But I have just 3 things that I think we can all start doing today to prepare ourselves for this new world. The first, I'm going to borrow from one of my favorite technology writers, Socrates, who said, "Know thyself." Maybe a slightly different context in which he meant it. But this is really where it all begins, because to have a chance of surviving this wave of accelerating AI, we need to look inward. We need to understand ourselves at a deep level. Where we get into trouble with these sort of algorithmic deference instances is where we're not actually quite sure what we value. We're not sure what brand of dog food we want, what TV show we want to watch. Our indecision and our lack of self-knowledge actually makes it much easier for us to be influenced. So in order to survive, we need to construct a positive identity, a robust identity that can withstand an assault from machines. Because self-knowledge is an area where we actually do still have the advantage. Right now, some algorithms seem to understand us eerily well. I was watching a video the other day on TikTok. There was a woman who was saying, for years I would go on TikTok and I was just very confused because I would see all these videos of really attractive lesbians, and I'm married to a man, and I just sort of brushed it off as like maybe the algorithm just misfired, and I'll go cleanse my algorithm by looking at videos of puppies or whatever. And then she said, fast forward a couple of years, I'm coming out, I've left my husband for a woman that I met at a bar. Holy smokes, TikTok knew I was gay before I did. But I'm sure we've all had the experience of running into an algorithm that doesn't know us at all. My favorite example is when you buy something from Amazon, like you buy a screwdriver and it says, "Would you like a screwdriver?" No, I just bought it. A lot of these algorithms, they're getting smarter, but they're still pretty dumb. They get it wrong, they don't pigeonhole us correctly, or they miss what we think is important about ourselves. But this is changing. The machines are getting better, and so our knowledge of self has to get better too. If the machines learn to understand us better than we understand ourselves, especially on things that are sort of core to who we are, like our desires, our emotional needs, then the authority will transfer to them. Knowledge is power, and when it comes to keeping algorithms in their place, self-knowledge is power. We also need to resist machine drift. Machine drift is a term I came up with a few years ago, and it basically describes the opposite of self-knowledge. It's when we give over more and more of our decisions to machines without really thinking about it. Like, we let them pick, which music we listen to, what food we eat, etc., but also like where we go on vacation, how we think, how we vote, what we pay attention to. It's this kind of passive surrender, and it allows machines to influence us at the preconscious level. And this is really bad. Like this is the first step in losing our autonomy. So as a first step to resisting machine drift, I recommend doing what you could call preference mapping. So I went through this exercise myself a few years ago. Write down all of the choices that you make in a day, no matter how small, and try to figure out which of those choices are actually yours and which are being shaped by machines. Do you buy those shoes because the website recommended them or because you actually like them? When you commute to work, do you just go the way that Google tells you to go because it's the way Google tells you to go, or do you go the way you want to go, even if it takes a few minutes longer? You can also start putting a little more friction back in your daily routine. You can take the long way to work. I actually disable the YouTube autoplay feature that plays another video when the one you're watching is done. I also disable the thing on Gmail where it completes your emails for you, which takes me a little longer, but it's actually me communicating with people, not a robot. There are these moments where you can make things a tiny bit less convenient for yourself in hopes of spurring some self-reflection, some moments where you step back and say, wait a minute, is that really what I want to say or do? Another good way to resist machine drift is just to spend less time on your phone. A few years ago, I did a 30-day phone detox program with the help of a professional phone rehab specialist. It was really bad. It was an amazing experience. It was not easy, but it did help me in many ways. It improved my focus and productivity. I rediscovered hobbies. It got me back into reading, and it radically improved my marriage. If you're laughing nervously at that, just find me after the talk. I will introduce you to my phone rehab specialist. The third thought that I want to share with you is that in order to survive into the future, we need to invest in humanity. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that we should just go fund a bunch of philosophy scholarships, although that would be fine. What it means is that we constantly need to be working to improve our deeply human skills, the things machines aren't very good at yet. like empathy and moral courage and divergent thinking. We also need to start valuing those skills more highly in others. And here is where I'm actually very optimistic. Because I think that in the coming years, as AI continues to accelerate, we're going to see a renewed kind of humanism emerge, and a growing reverence for the things that machines can't do. I think we'll collectively spend more time on apps and social networks that actually connect us to people rather than just addicting and enraging us for profit. I think we'll gain a greater appreciation for people like healthcare workers, teachers, therapists. Maybe we'll even have an artisanal journalism movement, and I'll get to come back to Australia and do this talk again in a few years instead of a robot standing up here and doing it for me. By working on our deeply human skills and investing in the deeply human skills of others, we not only make ourselves harder to replace, but we fortify the kind of society that can be collectively resilient in the face of technological change. The machines can only beat us if we let them, and honestly, I don't think we will. It's too much fun here in Margaritaville. Thank you.
The Festival of Dangerous Ideas is presented by the Ethics Centre. The Ethics Centre delivers programs and experiences designed to bring ethics to the centre of our life. We offer counselling for individuals, leadership and development services, events, courses and educational resources. As a non-profit charity, we rely heavily on donations and memberships. Please visit the Ethics Centre website to find out more. Thank you.